Cities are defined by their cultures. Those cultures could entail sports or business or certainly arts and entertainment. Oklahoma City is thriving in all of these areas, but who makes that all happen? This Town OKC explores the people behind the cultures, their origins, their motivations, their challenges, and their dreams. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. I've been in this town for over 50 years with a front row seat to seeing the culture grow from a dusty bus stop on the Southern Plains to a flourishing destination. Join me as we meet the folks behind the culture on This Town OKC. Jackson Gifford, thank you for sitting in the rehearsal studio at Carpenter Square Theater so we can record This Town OKC.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, the honor is mine. And as you know, because you say you listen,
I do.
I talk to people with decades of experience. You're on this planet only a couple of decades.
Yeah, that is true. Yes, I'm honored. When you asked me, I was quite surprised, but excited.
Well, I saw an opportunity to put down on the permanent record your goals for Southern Plains Productions.
Absolutely.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
But since this is an oral history podcast.
Sure.
All right. What's your story, young man? Where you from? Who's your daddy?
Let's see if I can stretch this story and elongate it, because like you said, I'm very early on in my professional career. So I'm born in Edmond, Oklahoma, born and raised, and I was always at heart a city boy, and I really wanted to go to Classen School of Advanced Studies.
Okay.
At the time, both the middle school and the high school was housed in that same building on Classen.
Right. It's the old Classen High School.
It is, yeah.
So you attended the Classen School of Advanced Studies until your senior year.
Well, I attended through my freshman year of high school.
Okay.
Yes, and I should say that I grew up doing theater anywhere and everywhere, but I really got my start at Lyric. And what happened was I was in elementary school, and they used to do a school program. This one was American Bandstand, and they had Dick Clark and lots of Elvis music, And I remember just being so excited about this.
Yeah.
And so my mom was like, okay, well, he must be interested in the theater. And she had a tradition with her mom that, she grew up in St. Louis, and they have the wonderful theater, the Muni. And what the Muni does so well is they give away so many seats at each performance. It's an 11,000 seat theater, and I think they give away the final 1,000 each night. And so her mom would take her, and they would sit in the free seats, and I think her first musical was Cats. And so, she wasn't a big theater person, but she had that fond memory and wanted to basically do that with me. And so she took me to the Civic Center to see Little Shop of Horrors. And I remember.
Was this in the Freedy?
It was in the big Civic Center. Yeah.
Wow.
I know. And this was a while ago, but Lyric was presenting it.
Okay.
And I remember walking in there and being, my only experience being in the theater was going to the AMC or, the movies.
Right.
And so I said, which theater are we going to? And she was like, this is all one big theater. And that was just completely brand new to me. And I remember sitting down and just being so fascinated.
How old were you when your mother took you to see the Rocky Horror Show?
Oh, she's never taken me to see the Rocky Horror Show, but I did go when I was 16 on Halloween night.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what show did she take you to first?
Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh,
yes,
that's right.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes.
You said Little Shop.
Yes.
Okay.
But
So what age were you when she took you to see Little Shop?
I was in fourth grade. And I remember waiting for the bus, to come, at school to drop me off back at home. And she was like, we got to go. Somehow, we must have been seeing a matinee or something. And, I remember walking into the theater and just, it was so huge in there. And I didn't know what I didn't know what to expect. And so at intermission, the lights came up, and I leaned over to my mom, and I said, please don't let it be over. And she said, it's not over. It's just intermission. And so from there, that kind of began a lifelong fascination with the performing arts.
Yeah.
And later on, there was a newspaper article that advertised auditions for Oliver, which is the male Annie,
Sure, yeah.
And they were looking for a bunch of boys to be in the ensemble. And my parents signed me up, and I ended up joining the cast. And I remember I was so excited to be on stage that I couldn't help but smile. But we were supposed to be sad little orphans.
Sure, right.
And so, we like come on stage and everybody's like kind of trudging on there and they look all gloomy except for me, who's like smiling, beaming with excitement. And afterwards, my mom was like, Jackson, like you can't smile at the beginning. So what I would do for the rest of the run is I would bite my lips in order to keep myself from smiling because I was just that excited to be on stage.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yes. And so that began basically, I haven't stopped performing yet, I guess. I'm still going. So then I started signing up for classes, and I would do my own research and figure out, which community theaters in town were auditioning. So there was a time where I lived, my parents still live in the same house in Edmond. So they would drive me from Edmond to Classen, which was about 30 minutes in Oklahoma City. Then they would pick me up I'd have rehearsal at Classen. They'd pick me up. They'd take me to Norman to go to the Sooner Theater.
Wow.
They'd pick me up from Norman. They'd take me back down to Oklahoma City to go to Jewel Box because I would have rehearsal for, what show was happening there. And then I would go from Jewel Box back home and do it all again. And sometimes we'd throw in lyric if I had like a voice lesson. And
I'm guessing you have no siblings.
No siblings.
Okay.
This is only child syndrome, like to the max, which you could probably tell. And so I should say, on top of all of this, like as much as I enjoyed performing, like there was always a part of me that was peeking behind the curtain and really fascinated with everything that was going on. I was a very shy kid, if you could believe it. But
I can, yeah.
I was always very observant. And so what I started doing was in between shows or in between classes in a down season, I would get my sheets out from my bed, and I would hang them on our mantle. And I would turn our living room into a theater. I had ladders and things, and we had these cabinets. And there's actually, it's still there. My parents haven't taken it down all these years. If you flip open the inside of the cabinet, I had this little sign, and it said tickets that I had handwritten on an index card. And I would, charge my parents and my stuffed animals to come see these shows. And so eventually, my mom got tired of me turning the living room into a theater, and she said, "Okay, can we move all of this maybe like into our spare bedroom, and we can use this as your theater like play space?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So the next thing you know, I'm climbing on ladders, I'm staple gunning sheets into the ceiling, like I am turning this place into a full-on theater. And my grandparents had come for a visit, and I had asked them for theater lighting for Christmas. I mean, you can imagine, like, I'm not a very popular kid. Like, I was getting bullied frequently, as I should have been, honestly, for this.
No.
I understand the bullying now. No. And my grandpa comes in there, and I have all this theater lighting running, and he opens the door, looks in, closes it, looks right at my mom and says, "Ellen, he's going to burn a hole in your house. Like, he's going to burn your house to the ground." And so, soon after that, we started getting rid of those things, and we had donated them, I think, to Sooner Theater. And we joke now that, we should have held on to them because, all these years later,
now you need them.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you're renting lights.
Exactly. I'm like, if only we had those cheapy church lights is basically what they were, like little tiny lights. But yeah, that's, I guess, my formative years. And
so where did you end up going to high school?
Yeah. So when I was a freshman in high school, I had applied to go to Interlochen Arts Academy in their summer camp. And
nice.
It was a 7-week camp in northern Michigan, and basically went there and fell in love with it. And they had like a very prestigious arts academy as well that was like a boarding school. And it was really expensive. And I remember like trying to talk my parents into like letting me go. And they were like, "No, like you're not doing that. Like just go to the camp and like, enjoy that. Enjoy the 7 weeks that you have." And
well, just to get into Interlochen for the summer program, not too shabby, Jackson.
No, very, very, very prestigious.
Exactly.
And it was truly like such a wonderful summer. And I met amazing friends that I still keep up with.
And so you're, 13 at this time?
I'm 13 years old, and at camp, they were holding auditions for the Arts Academy. And I went into the library with my two friends from the camp who were already going to the academy. They were going to start in the fall. They'd already been accepted. And I went into the library and I logged onto the application portal and I submitted an application. I had to reach out to my current school, which was Class N, and ask for transcripts. I had to reach out to folks and ask for recommendation letters. Did this all behind my parents' back. They had no idea.
Of course, yeah.
Then I scheduled a formal audition with the head of the theater program, and then I got in. And I basically got in because, not to backtrack, but at Lyric, I was always a really terrible dancer. And I remember Stephen Hilton, who would be such a fascinating person to interview as well. He was the head of their education program, and we were in the middle of rehearsal one day, and I must have been really butchering the choreography. And he looked at me and he said, "You need to get in every single dance class that you can possibly get in." And so I did, and I kind of like took a year off. My 8th grade year, I really stopped performing in musicals, and I started taking dance class at studios and
good for you,
being very serious about that. And so I basically had made it into Interlochen, not from my acting ability, but because they were doing a big dance musical in the fall and they needed boys who could dance. And so they just kind of like, I remember specifically, I did my 2 monologues, my Shakespeare, and then my contemporary. And the director of the program looked at me and he said, "So you can dance, right? Like you're a dancer." Like, he was really looking for some dancers. So that's really how I got in.
Okay, so they based on your audition, your application and audition, they cast you in the fall production.
They cast me in the fall production.
Now, did you get a full ride?
Pretty much, which was crazy and kind of unheard of a little bit. Interlochen itself does a fantastic job with scholarships because there's so many supporters and believers, as am I, having graduated from the program, that I want to funnel resources back to those kids who are coming up in it now. But they also have, department dollars that they give specifically to kids, which I had received as well, which was fantastic. And basically, I was intended that I was going to leave summer camp and school was going to have started at Class N, and I was going to miss a couple of days. And so basically, I had told my parents that I had gotten into Interlochen. School had already started back in Oklahoma, and I was missing the first couple of days. And my friends were texting me, "You're missing so much work and all of this stuff." And basically, I responded back and was like, "Hey, I am actually not coming back to Class N. I'm going to boarding school full time." And I don't really think I realized what I was getting myself into.
Probably not at the age of 13.
No. Yeah, I remember my parents dropping me off 3 weeks later, and my mom was crying, and it was, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And I just really fell in love with it. And I was surrounded by some of the most passionate teachers I could have ever imagined. There was this woman named Gulshareen Dubosh who was one of the meanest people I think I have ever met. That's not a fair statement. She is truly like somebody who just cares so much, but her tactics are brutal. And she used to call our generation the death of theater.
Yeah. That's motivation.
Exactly. I remember as a kid, I don't know if you would believe this now, but as a kid, I was always trying to find, when it came to academics, I was always trying to find the easy way out. And so I was,
You and every other kid.
Exactly. I thought that was pretty normal, you know. At least they make it seem that way on Disney Channel. But I was, going to sit in the back of the class and just do what I could to get by. And so Interlochen was a whirlwind for me because every single class was small and intimate because there was only, I think, maybe 500 or 600 kids in the whole school between disciplines. And my English class, for example, took place around a board meeting table. And the entire class consisted of participation. And we would literally just read and then talk about the reading. And that was also very similar to a world theater class I had and a play structure and analysis class I had, which was one of my first classes as a sophomore. And I remember that I had kind of I thought I had managed to fake my way through, the first couple of days of class. And we were reading Tartuffe. And I was stumbling through this classical text. And she stops the class and she's like, Jackson, you are the worst Oregon I have ever heard in all of my years of teaching. And she basically is like, you need to work hard in order to catch up. And I was surrounded by people who were from the UK and from Thailand and from Florida and from California and just amazing, Russia, like amazing individuals who all were like obsessed with Shakespeare. And I just was like, I don't know what to, and then she proceeds, she keeps going. She says, you think that you're really good because you know musical theater and you know dance, but really that doesn't mean shit. And you basically she was like, you suck, like basically.
Yeah.
And then she looks at the rest of the class and she's like, you all suck and you're trying to size each other up, but really none of you are very good and you need to put your heads down and focus. And I think that basically kind of pulled the rug out from underneath all of us. Mm-hmm. And then we all kind of just got to work collectively. And it was no longer about, ego. It was no longer about trying to be the best in the class. Instead, we were all just kind of on this journey together. And that's what proceeded for the next 3 years at Interlochen.
Wow.
And
did you continue to get scholarships?
Yes, yeah, which was
That's
wonderful.
Amazing.
And it was an incredible program.
At what point, and please tell me there was a point, at what point did you realize I'm in a really special place that all these other people have just sacrificed so much to be here?
Yeah.
I need to step up to their level.
It was pretty early on.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
Which was good. I mean, I never underestimated how privileged I was to be in that environment. And I mean, Gulsh was we called her Gulsh, was a special character, but and continues to be like a mentor in my life. Now we're friends, of course.
Good. Yeah.
But there were also.
So she has approved?
Of course. Yes. And she's a wonderful woman. And there's so many amazing teachers that were very kind and used, kindness as a strategy. So it just was a very complete experience. I think that's on their website. It's like Interlochen, a complete experience.
Yeah.
So my senior year, they basically take all of the kids in the theater program to Chicago to audition for the colleges.
Nice.
And it's like they hype this process up a lot. Like it basically is like the culmination of your time is which college you're going to go to, which is very overwhelming and stressful. And everybody has like a individual, there's like 7 or 8 members on the theater faculty and each one of them gets assigned to a student. And, they have multiple and they basically work your college audition packages and they're like, you need to have 7 monologues and you need to have 4 songs. They basically build out your book.
Yeah, they prepare you.
Right.
They make sure you're prepared.
Absolutely, yes. And
That's
you're watching
fantastic.
the class above you go through this, and you're watching people go to Juilliard and Michigan and RADA and Lambda and incredible schools. And so there's a lot of pressure on this. It feels very. It's a huge deal, is how it feels, I guess, at the time. And so they took us to Unifieds in February of 2020, and things were there were some rumors starting to happen about a little cold that was going around, a little disease. And essentially we had all gone to Unifieds, auditioned for all these schools. We came back to Northern Michigan. It was freezing, which, by the way, I guess I should say, we get what's called at Interlochen lake effect snow because it's surrounded by Duck Lake and Green Lake.
And for the purposes of educating us all, tell me exactly where Interlochen is.
Yeah, it's right by Traverse City, all the way up north. So, and then Interlochen is its own little tiny town, but there is nothing. Like, there's a restaurant called Bud's and another one. I don't remember the name of it, but it was.
Blink and you miss it.
Exactly. And
it says entering Interlochen on both sides of the sign.
Yes, exactly. Literally that. And the snow would just be so crazy that you would be walking through blizzards to get to class. So we get back and it's a blizzard and everyone has seasonal depression. And basically the nurse used to have little light lamps in their office so you could come and sit under them to try and escape the depression and get some sunlight.
Yeah.
And we all got back and we were like, yeah, word has it, like there's a lot going on, and the other universities have been canceling classes, and we were right in the middle of doing a chorus line that was my senior year musical. And yeah, essentially we get an email from the president of Interlochen, and he was basically like, we're going to have a community meeting today, and don't go to class. Everybody come to the theater. And they sat us all down as a collective, and they basically said, you're going home for the next month. We're going to see what happens, and there's a chance you might come back. And it almost made it harder because we kind of thought that maybe we would come back. So we didn't really get those like goodbyes, you know?
Yeah. Well, nobody knew anything in those days.
Yeah, it was really hard. And I remember they were like, you have to go home and you have to pack up your dorm room, and we're going to ship the boxes back to you. And that's what happened. We all went back home and packed up. And I remember...
Did your folks go up to get you?
No, I flew back to them. And my best friend, now we weren't very close at the time, she went to Michigan for theater. And we were on the same flight back from Detroit. And I remember like we just saw each other and we both had tears in our eyes. It was like a very special moment, I guess. I don't know. We both talk about that. But essentially, yeah, that happened. And then I remember watching graduation online, which was very depressing. And then I was supposed to start school at Otterbein University in Ohio.
Okay, before you get to Otterbein, did you do online classes the rest of the semester?
We did, yeah. But they weren't, anything special.
Right, of course.
We had this is the kind of place that Interlochen is. So I needed to fit in a voice lesson, and I couldn't find an English class that would satisfy the credit that I needed to take because I needed to take this voice lesson. So the director of theater created an English class for me and 3 other theater students where we would sit around at lunch and talk about plays. So he would assign us a different play, and then we would read that. And that literally satisfied as our English credit. So we had that online, and we had to do conversations about different plays we were reading. But really it was more so like Interlochen was always amazing about checking in with you and seeing how you were doing. And so it was more so just like, how's everyone doing mentally? And
right.
Yeah, I think in general, like that place taught me how to be a human. It taught me how to be an artist, and it taught me how to like really form an opinion and think on my own. And that was a complete 180 from what I experienced going to musical theater school, which, it was a fantastic school for musical theater, but they were very focused on how high you could pull your leg above your head as opposed to like what you were thinking.
Right.
How critically you were thinking.
Exactly.
And so that didn't sit well with me. As a freshman, I was a little outspoken. And, word had it that even at these prestigious schools like, the Guthrie or at Juilliard, like everybody was kind of experiencing what they called the Interlochen effect, which is that freshman year is like a big, giant recap of everything you had learned at Interlochen. And people were having a hard time just like adapting to college. And they called it PIDS, post-Interlochen depression syndrome. And essentially I was experiencing PIDS big time. And we were also in the middle of COVID, and I was doing ballet in my dorm room at 8:00 in the morning.
Oh my.
And
online?
On Zoom, yes. I just remember everybody was like, equity employment is 0% rate. And
right.
I remember Interlochen sitting us down and being like, look around, look at your cohort. Like, these are the people who are these are people who are going to be in your life forever. And they said, these people are going to start theater companies. They're going to write plays. They're going to be directors. They're going to be actors. This is your network. And they were right. And I remember always knowing that I wanted to start a theater company. I used to say, like, I really want to be the artistic director of the Muni when I grow up. And because that theater is so meaningful to me, my grandma used to take me there and we would sit in the free seats too. And,
oh, nice.
I just remember basically having a lot of conversations with a lot of folks. And basically I was like, I don't know why I'm waiting to do this thing that I've always really wanted to do. And
Well, before you get, you're about to jump into Southern Plains Productions.
Yes.
But we haven't gone to Otterbein yet.
Okay, you're right. Let's circle back. Otterbein was a great experience, and I met two really wonderful people that I'm like best friends with. One of which is my roommate now. The other one is living her musical theater dreams. She's playing Amber in Hairspray on Royal Caribbean right now. And it just was like the epitome of musical theater heaven. Like if you were somebody who was wanting to sing and dance all day long, like that was the place to be.
What part of Ohio is Otterbein?
It's in Westerville, which is actually where Prohibition began, right outside of Columbus. And they have this giant statue that's like a barrel cracked open and it's a fountain. And people in Columbus lovingly refer to it as Mayberry because it just really is like a hallmark town.
Yeah.
And so the university itself is really beautiful, and it's basically the university is the town of Westerville.
Sure.
And it's really small. It's religiously affiliated. We used to have choir in the church, and sometimes the little church ladies like would make food for us, like on exam weeks and things. It was a tiny program. There was 8 people in every class. I think they've expanded it now. They're kind of going through a leadership change. But the faculty who was in charge of this program had been there for decades.
Yeah.
And so they were like institutions of themselves, really, in and of themselves, and had very strict set ways of how theater should be practiced and how musical theater itself should be created. And, you know, times are changing too, so that was hard.
Yes.
I think they were feeling the pressure to adjust, but were sort of unwilling and didn't necessarily know how to adjust. And it was a very interesting 4 years. I think
Did you start there in the fall of 20?
Yeah. And so that whole first year was on Zoom.
Okay.
And I remember my sophomore year, we wore masks. We were in person, but we wore masks up until, I think, March or April. And I remember we were doing Something Rotten, and we were like in the middle of rehearsal, and we got an email from the president of the university that was basically like, from today on, like masks will no longer be required to be worn. And then we got another email from the chair of the theater department that was like, we're still gonna wear masks, like everybody wear the masks. And the music director was like, hell no. And this is a vivid memory I have, is us all being in this music rehearsal, and we're like wearing the masks, but we don't really know, like we're wearing the masks because we got the email to wear the masks, and the music director's like, everybody take your masks off, take them off. She's looking at it. Some people are taking them off, other people are keeping them on. Like it just was crazy. And we were taking them off and seeing our instructors' faces for the first time in basically 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years of learning from these people, and we had never seen the bottom half of their face.
Oh, my goodness. Did you ever go through the period of wearing the clear mask that came up and didn't cover the whole face?
No. And we never did that, but we had these crazy masks that looked like a duckbill, and it was because there was, like, I guess, room to sing. It was some... Going to school during COVID was a big challenge.
Yeah.
And it was probably because of that partially, and me just, me being a leader in and of myself and wanting to do this thing, wanting to start a theater company, basically, that it all happened. And so it was born my freshman year of college. And I remember that everybody who I knew in Oklahoma was like, oh yeah, like Jackson dropped out of college and like started a theater company. And like, I guess I'm here to set the record straight that no, like I finished all 4 years of college. I was running Southern Plains from Ohio. And then I would come home in the summer and we would do a production. We would do 2 productions. And I felt like Hannah Montana in a way, like I was like living the best of both worlds. And basically none of the faculty at Otterbein like knew that I was running a theater company, and like nobody in Oklahoma like knew that I was like still going to school for musical theater. It was really like
Kind of a
weird.
dual life here.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, I remember that sort of towards my junior year, I had this really amazing professor named Lenny Leibowitz, and he's a drama desk winner and was the artistic director of an off-Broadway company in New York. And he basically, me and him basically kind of started talking about Southern Plains, and he would give me tidbits of information and wisdom and just kind of share with me his experience being an artistic director. And so he was truly like such an influence. And yeah, I think that's when people kind of started
This
to
would have
realize.
been 2018, 19?
2019, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when Southern Plains kind of started to pick up speed. I mean, I have stories in and of themselves of the early beginnings of SPP, but
Well,
yeah,
we have a little bit of time.
yeah. Well, so basically, what
I
happened
mean,
is
the reason you're here is
Yes.
because of your creation of Southern
Yeah.
Plains Productions and the shows that you're bringing to this town. And so I want to know some early day challenges.
absolutely. I've got quite a few to share.
I'm sure.
So we decided, obviously, because it was COVID, we were going to stage our first show outdoors, and we went to the Myriad Gardens, and they were very welcoming and excited to have us. There's that. It's a beautiful. The Myriad Gardens amphitheater is stunning. For those who haven't seen it, it's a horrible place to do theater.
I
But
was just going to say the same
yes,
thing.
everybody was just like, "Whoa, this theater is so gorgeous!" Because I basically started calling on a lot of friends I had met from high school and that I had met from college. And I knew this guy named Jake who went to Sooner Theater with me as a kid, and he had gone on to study directing at Carnegie Mellon. And so I was like, okay, like, yeah, he's a director. Like, he knows what he's doing. And he did. And so I was like, okay, like,
What was the show?
it was called Smallmouth Sounds by Bess Wool. And it was a play that primarily, it's about 70%, about 70% of the play takes place in silence. And it's a really cool play.
Easy to be off book for that show.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really cool play if you have a tiny little intimate black box to perform it in. Unfortunately, we had what felt like, a giant arena.
Right.
And little tiny expressions on the face were not reading
Right.
past the first row.
Yeah.
And we had marketed it hard, and every single, person that I had known growing up in Oklahoma, we'd invited artistic directors and friends and family members. We had 2 performances, and everybody showed up, and it poured down rain. And it was like a disaster. The performance was like, I'll be honest, the performance was bad, not because of the cast or the director, but because of I wasn't a very good artistic director, and I didn't know, that this wasn't going to work out. Like, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And yeah, basically people were like huddling in the backstage area because it was thundering and lightning like so hard. And then when the rain would stop, like people would go back out and we gave them towels and they would wipe down the seats. And people were just trying to be polite. And I think also they were excited to see theater and they were excited to see the new beginning of something. But the process of putting that show together was crazy. I mean, we rehearsed the whole thing over Zoom, this whole silent play over Zoom. Then we brought everybody to Oklahoma. They were working from and this is because they were all friends of either mine or Jake's and were personally invested in this company and in this project. And they were working from like 8 a.m. in the morning to like 11 p.m. at night and then getting back up. And my friend Gianna, who was from here, was like housing like 6 people at her house. And I was housing 2 and Jake was housing. I mean, we were just like as scrappy could be.
Yeah.
And I guess I should say like this theater company like came about from when I was a child. I knew I wanted to be an artistic director and I knew I wanted to start a theater company. And one year for Christmas, my parents gave me like $2,500 and were like, this is for like one day when you start a theater company. And when I was a freshman, like I was like, I'm going to cash that check and I'm going to make a show happen. And we really did for nearly $2,500. I mean, maybe we put a little bit more into it, but It was pretty bare bones. The set was some logs that were in Jake's backyard and just like, as scrappy as we could be. I guess that we did something right because we got the attention of a lot of influential people, and it kind of triggered a lot of people wanting to meet me because I think that they thought that I knew what I was doing a little bit more than I did. And so I remember like sitting down with like I won't say his name, but somebody very influential in the Oklahoma City theater scene. And he said to me like, like, what are your plans? What do you want to do? And I said, well, I have this really good idea. I have this idea that I think is really good. And it's to do Lizzie, the musical at the Tower Theater. And he said, don't do that. There is a company that produces musicals and they are far superior. And they are basically like, to do this would be a bad decision. Like it's gonna look like you don't know what you're doing, basically. And I was like, okay, like, note taken. And then I was like, no, I really want to do it. And I have a lot of belief in this project. And so I did. And I found some amazing people online. My friend, Cameron, I found her website online, and she had done a lot of associate work at the Muni and at Bay Street Theater in Sag Harbor. And I thought that she seemed like the right person. So I just sent her a cold email, to which she responded, no, thank you. And after some, back and forth, she agreed to kind of meet over Zoom. And, I can be very persuasive, I guess. I have that way. And so basically after an hour-long conversation, she had agreed to look at the script, and from there had agreed to do the project. And
Did she play Lizzie?
No, she was the director.
Director, okay.
I remember telling my roommate at the time in college, I was a sophomore, and I said, I'm about to meet with this person who's way overqualified to do this. And she was. and somehow she did it. And then I called up Hicha Poos, who I had observed her work growing up in Oklahoma, but never met her. And after talking with her as well, she agreed to do it. And basically, then we put out a casting search on Playbill, and we got about 300 auditions. And we found some four incredible women to star in this production, two of whom have gone on to Broadway, and the other two are doing really amazing regional work and in New York now. And basically, we sold out the Tower Theater, and we had gone from, audiences of like 25 to our show before that was at Factory Obscura. We were doing it in their garage. There was no air conditioning. People were sweating. I mean, we had really gone from like scrappy to somehow deciding to rent the Tower Theater. And it worked, basically. We sold out the whole thing. And that's when Southern Plains, I think, kind of took a step forward, and everyone was like, oh, there's a new theater company in town.
So was this your second summer?
This was our second summer, but it was technically our third show. And it's interesting, the first two shows really, were I guess, under the radar. Nobody really had noticed them because they weren't, people didn't really realize we had arrived until Lizzie. And so from there, it stopped becoming a creative playground and where we were just, doing things in garages and with items in people's backyard. And it started becoming like a summer stock. And so we were doing small plays in site-specific spaces because we didn't have really the money to build sets, even though we were building some things. And I think, was Chinese Lady the first show you had saw?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I think it probably was. An incredible script, wonderful production, great place upstairs at Plenty.
Yeah.
Plenty Mercantile. And the two actors in that were just incredible.
Yeah.
And very well directed.
Yes. And it was like a friend of a friend basically knew that director. And yeah, I think in general, Southern Plains has succeeded and was born out of passion and utilizing people who were really excited and wanted to do this not necessarily for a check, but because they cared about it and loved it.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And I think that oftentimes, like, you know, in New York, we have like almost like an embarrassment of riches, like so much great theater happening everywhere.
Right.
And things like Southern Plains are everywhere. But it's not necessarily the case in Oklahoma. And we also like, I think sometimes when we talk about professional theater, we lose that like that spark, and it starts to be going, well, how much am I getting paid for this? And which is obviously everybody deserves to be paid for their art if they desire to do so. If they desire to be paid, they deserve it. But all that to say, like it basically was born out of passion. And yeah, we were doing things in the planetarium and things at Plenty Mercantile.
Oh, the Silent Sky production at the planetarium. So beautiful.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. It just a lot of love, and I mean things like me, you know, putting up platforms, and
Right.
I mean, the director of Chinese Lady and I were hanging trash bags on the walls to cover up the light in the with coming in from the windows, you know. But yeah, what just kept impressing people was how good the productions were. And that's because friends of friends and being able to collaborate with our local art scene, but also bringing in, you know, emerging artists and people who were passionate about these projects. And yeah, now that we have entered into year 5, it's sort of really taking shape as like a professional regional theater, and it's equity now, and we're hiring, you know, union crew members as well, which is exciting. And so I think the next 5 years for us looks like making space for a new year-round regional theater in Oklahoma. And
do you have plans to have a space, or do you want to keep moving around?
it's a great question, and one we're kind of, you know, you were like a fly on the wall in our conversation last night. It is, I don't know, it's heavily debated. I think that there's something exciting about like the pop-up aspect of Southern Plains, and the fact that we really can, size and scale can really vary on which venue we're at. You know, because we've done things obviously at the Contemporary now and at the Civic Center, but we've also done things at the Farmers Market and in the back room at Plenty Mercantile and the Planetarium. So I think that one thing I'll say is when we were doing things inside specific spaces, they were beautiful productions and fantastic experiences. But what we were missing was we were just off on our quality. Like it wasn't quite as good as something you would see like at an equity regional theater around the country or on one of the coasts. And I knew that we could be that good. We just were missing the space that was built for theater. And so one of my goals, I think, this year is to show that production quality. And also, it's really hard on the crew, and it's hard on me and the directors and the actors to have to adjust quickly to a space that is not built for theater. And there's lots of little things that can come up. So when we have spaces like the Contemporary and the Civic Center, I think we really see the quality elevated.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are pros and cons,
1,000%.
as you well know, to everything, and including having your own facility, because then you have to maintain the facility, not just the stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what another thing that we've done really well is a lot of theater companies in general just have a lot of overhead, you know, because
Yes, they do.
they have like a full-time staff, and, you know, basically Southern Plains is my mom and I. And I should say that, you know, my mom has a background in business, and
That helps.
yes, and is a leader in her industry. You know, she worked in healthcare for a long time.
Do a by name shout out to both of your parents.
Yeah, Ellen Gifford and John Gifford. And my dad is a writer. And so that's where I think I get those like critical thinking skills, that gene and the artsy bone. And so, yeah, I think that if it hadn't been for the two of them, like this wouldn't have have gone as far as it did.
Of course.
And they're so smart in their disciplines. You know, my mom is such a business person, and my dad is so thoughtful, and he's a writer and a photographer. So, you know, companies are having to pay like thousands of dollars to have their shows photographed at a professional level, and it's free for us. And they're having to pay, you know, think very critically about how to copyright their website and how to get their marketing materials out, and that's free for us. And, you know, it just basically, because of the resources that the three of us had, you know, when people put together a theater company, they don't just go to their parents and say, hey, let's start a theater company. They don't do it around their dining room tables. It's usually like, you know, people within the community that have a love for theater and a love for the arts, which usually doesn't translate to a love for business or a business background. And so what's been cool about Southern Plains is that we're in year 5. We just did this great show with Waka Waka. And
the Waka Waka Theater Company out of New York.
Yes, and they are actually, I think it's Norway that they're officially. I think it's
that's right, yeah.
Oslo and New York. I think they're kind of co-based out of both. But their artistic director, Gwen, was talking to us after the opening, and she said, you know, I can tell almost immediately when a theater company is going to make it or not when we come into town. And she said it depends heavily on the community and the culture that the company has created. And she said, you're going to make it. And that, of course, made me smile.
Of course.
Made me happy. And she said, you're what? You're 10 years old? And I said, we're 5 years old. And she said, this is unheard of for a 5-year-old company, which is true, I think. I mean, the quality of the production and where we are now at year 5, I can only imagine what year 10 will look like.
Yeah. Jackson Gifford, thank you so much for being my guest on this Town OKC. What a story.
Thanks for having me, Rick. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. This Town OKC is sponsored by Carpenter Square Theater because they let me record in the rehearsal studio. Edited by Fred O. Bishop, I'm Rick Allen Lippert. This has been a Lippert Media production.